that a second and go back to, so we're going to talk about the results from last time. That's 13. So, but at first I want to make some points. So I guess I'll go to the, this is it. So if you weren't here last time or you forgot, this is the website for the class. The syllabus is on there. Questions you have about how the class functions, etc., go there. But as you can probably infer from last time, the system, the grading system will be plus minus, but kind of without the minus. So, so last time you did this survey where you responded to a variety of statements I made. And so now we'll look at the results. And I'm going to make some comments about them, and then we're going to have some exercises where we think about them, etc. And by the way, we're going to use this poll everywhere for some of your responses. Your use of that, one, shouldn't cost you anything. Two, doesn't count towards your grade per se, but it will be helpful for me to troubleshoot how we might help improve your learning in this class if you do it. I was told this morning that when you signed up, if you registered as a voter on the link that I gave you, if you put your phone number in there, then when you use your phone in class to respond to a poll, you don't actually have to log in advance for the system to know who you are. But if you didn't put your phone number in, or if you go online, do it through a laptop, and maybe through Tweet, you do have to log in advance. Okay? It's all optional, right? It's voluntary, but I'm just telling you how to use it, and you probably know this better than I do. Okay, so read a bunch of statements to you, just wanted your gut reaction. We're going to see a variety of different distributions of responses. These are both classes combined, so there's almost 400 responses in these histograms. Smoking causes lung cancer. I would call that consensus agreement on it. You know, whether someone says, well, it's probably true or definitely true, you know, there's probably some philosophical issue there, but I don't care. You know, very few dissenters, very few people in the middle. Vaccinations the same, drunk driving, cell phones. A lot of these things have distributions like this. This one I threw in, I didn't expect you to know the answer to this. I wanted to get your impression about it. It looks like actually you find it as plausibly true. It does happen to be true that what are considered to be preventable medical errors are, I don't know, there's something like 8th leading cause of death in the country, which is pretty staggering when you think about it. If the airline was up there, no one would fly anymore. But that's not what the class is about. DNA typing. Responses tend to be fairly similar across the years, so we can look at this. What I'm going to do is pull up a different year, and then we can toggle back and forth. Let's go to 2007. And I don't remember where DNA typing. Oh, okay. So that was 6 years ago. Distributions look pretty similar. We do have, yeah, okay. Now, this one is interesting to me because you guys all realize that eyewitness identification is not reliable. And it's not just your class, it's the previous years. And you know, one of the things that's puzzling to me is if you look at the distributions year to year, you see these oddities, right? So there's not too many people in the no opinion relative to either side in 2013, same in 2007 and that. I can't figure it out, but it's there. Anyway, back to the point here. It is now well established that eyewitness identification is not very reliable, and yet it's been the single most important factor in wrongful convictions in this country. And prosecutors love having an eyewitness, and it's something about, I don't know whether the juries just aren't as educated as you are, or or there's something about the reality of being in a courtroom where there's a witness in tears saying they did it, they did it, they did it, the juries will tend to go with that rather than say they don't know what they're talking about. But so that's a contradiction that I haven't sorted out. Earth spherical. Earth orbits the sun. Back to 2007, where were we? 8, 9, 10, okay. So I changed, oops. See, I quit putting that in there because no one knew who Sherlock Holmes was at the time, and now there has been this show that I guess is somewhat popular. I've even seen it. And so now suddenly people know who Sherlock Holmes was. But, I used to get these responses. Who's Sherlock Holmes? I mean, so 11. So I'm trying to find the, okay, DNA typing in this one. Oh, here we go. Earth spherical. So that is 14. Oh. Where's Earth orbits the sun? So Earth orbits the sun. We got, what, 8% that say it's definitely false. That's 2007. 5% here. And I've never quite understood this. One year someone said it's a religious thing. It's very consistent year to year. Last hour, I had someone tell me, actually the whole class, that he'd kind of had enough of this and decided to sort of put down a bogus answer. Does anyone want to volunteer? And I don't know his name, so he's safe. So is that what's going on here? I mean, how many people put it down as a joke? I mean, I'm not going to get pissed about it, but I'm sort of curious because it's so consistent year after year. And the question is, well, why aren't there as many jokers doing this on the Earth being spherical? So I haven't quite figured this out, but it is very, very consistent. Could have something to do with the order in which I asked the questions. Okay, so still consensus. We're coming back to that one. Humans evolved. I suspect that's actually been changing over the years, but I don't really care. Humans on the moon, that was much more topical, 40 years ago when we actually watched the TV on it. Aliens, so, there are quite a few people willing to believe it is possible. Now we're getting into things like communicate with the dead, the substantial fraction willing to entertain it. Astrology predicts future. Most of you are skeptical of that. This one I'm going to come back to, not today, but later on, that a lot of you think it's untestable, and we'll consider actually how it can be tested. It has been tested in various ways and hasn't held up too much. I used to pose one of the statements, psychics are unusually good at winning the lottery, as one of the, because of course they aren't, and if they had any ability to predict, you'd think they'd be billionaires. There's no real answer to this one. It's just kind of your opinion. Will technology get us out of the oil crisis? This one I put in, it's not been in any of the previous years because someone in Texas claims to have sequenced the Bigfoot genome. How many of you know what Bigfoot is or Sasquatch? So you've all heard of this. There's no, this thing's been around as long as the Loch Ness sea monster and a few other things. There's never been any bones of these creatures, etc. Well, this person, who, by the way, this all used to be a Northwest phenomenon, where there are big forests, and you could, 50 years ago, you could imagine, well, maybe there could be someone hiding out or some population hiding out in the trees we don't know about. But it's moved to Texas as of the last year, and there's someone with a ranch, I don't know where, who claims to have lunch with Bigfoots and now claims to have sequenced their genome. They couldn't get the study published in any reputable journal, so they created their own journal to publish it. Climate change, I don't know why that's in there. Humans will go extinct. That's kind of a depressing thought. So here we're starting to see something that I call consensus uncertainty. In many cases, we get a lot of scatter, but there's nothing, you'd say as a population we're uncertain, but it's like people don't agree on whether they're unaware or have no opinion. This is one of the few where you see that, where it's actually bulged in the middle. We'll come back to this. There should be a Y on intrinsically rational. That I don't know why I put it in there. I know I put it in there, but it's not really relevant. And then there are a couple of number questions, odds of 9 over 100 greater than 1 in 10, and the baseball bat and the ball. And then this one, I want to get a sense of how common it is for opinion that, science is out there not necessarily working towards the common good, but maybe working against it. And so we'll sort of deal with issues like this in the class at some point, but not for a while. So what I want to do is summarize, make, I guess, a few points about these observations. And let me emphasize, so when it comes to a test, I'm not going to say, oh, on slide number 28, the fourth histogram from the right had how many in it, right? That's not my style. I want you to be aware of general patterns and kind of important concepts so we can draw from them, but I'm not going to ask you about things that we didn't discuss, and I would only ask you in a qualitative sense if it's something we discussed. So let's deal with that. So we can think of today's lecture as being kind of a look at our beliefs and the bases of those beliefs. And we'll just in parens note that we went through the responses to the survey. So we saw a strong consensus on many. Widespread responses on others. And there are a couple different categories we talked about, or distributions. Many with lots of scatter. And so what we see with those is that overall there's population uncertainty, but some individuals are absolutely sure, and others sure that it's true, others that are sure that it's false. We also saw some hints of bimodality. Which means kind of U-shaped but lopsided. Right? But if we were asking questions, so these are kind of in the realm of science, we might think, I don't know about the technology and oil crisis one, but if we were to go into political topics, like abortion, death penalty, and things like that, we might get much stronger bimodality on things like that than we would on than we did here. We saw some consensus uncertainty. Meaning highest in the middle. I was going to say humped in the middle, and then I thought that could be misinterpreted, so. And I have not made the point by lots of comparisons, but there are lots of similarities across years. So what I want to put to you now is why the different responses. So give us some ideas. And what I'm going to do is, as you suggest things, we'll list them off to the side, and then I'm going to lump them together into things. But so what's going on here is, why is there so much scatter on some of these things? Okay, so basically there's different beliefs could come from what? So, and she said we could say different cultural backgrounds. Others?
Different degrees of exposure to news?
Okay, yes. Exposure to media, and we could say facts. I'd like to keep those two concepts completely separate, but and we can put evidence in there. So some of you may know something about the evidence in some cases, and others not. Other things that come to mind?
Going with that, maybe that contradicts each other.
So in terms of who you talk to in that, your social group? Is that?
Media, like things out there in the internet.
Yeah, so different exposure to media. So I would use media in the broadest sense possible, but that could include your circle of friends too.
Maybe you saw someone else's answer and they just agreed with it.
Okay, so how about not thinking? Different levels of thought going into it. And we're going to deal with that actually pretty much. And there's something else that you're probably contemplating at least, and that is many times our responses are emotional. Yep.
Different levels of trust in the government or in science.
Ah, very good. Hadn't thought of that one. And you?
Questions of seriousness. There's always one of people who just give bogus responses.
Back to this Earth orbits the sun. Is anyone willing to admit they put down definitely false to get me? I don't know whether you're just chicken or, but I mean, I am curious about that one. Actually, if you look on the web, you can see that it is partly a religious thing. What should I do differently next year? Should I ask the orbit one first before the spherical one? Is that you're volunteering something or?
Response to that also, I guess the wording, the order of questions.
Yes, yeah, so that's right. If I asked things in a different order, I might get different responses. I don't really want to think about that because that means I can't interpret what I've got, but you're probably right.
Some more like misreading the question, because I know I did that a couple of them.
Yes. I'll just say question. So we'll put, I'm not going to get all of these, but I think these points capture much of it. There would be different familiarity with the evidence. And that would be different experiences too. use of different criteria, how we balance everything is going to vary. So we have evidence, culture, emotions. And some people respond much more emotionally to things than others, than other people, that is. The third point for now that we're going to have a fourth one, but we're going to pause for a minute, is I think an observation is that there's actually more scatter on statements for issues that science cannot disprove than on things for which we can say we have actual evidence. And so this would be communicate with the dead. You know, it's hard for science to say it's impossible. Aliens the same way. We can say we don't have evidence of it. But it's one thing to say, well, vaccines have this effect, or drug driving has this effect. It's kind of a positive thing, but where some of the statements are about, you know, negative things that we can't formally disprove. So now one other possibility that will come up is I will let you rethink this one. So this was a ball and a bat cost $1.10. If the bat is $1 more than the ball costs 10 cents. And there's pretty strong bimodality on this one. So what I want you to do is sit down with a piece of, well, in your notes, do the calculation and see if this is true. So you don't need to look at it in a minute. I got to get back to put this up. So we're going to actually do this as a poll. But do the calculations. I think I don't want you to see what last hour did. I forgot to erase the... And so when you've done the calculations or thought about it, so it's almost equal as to whether you thought it was true or false. Do the calculation and so you can send in a response on this, and there are 3 different ways to do it. Twitter, which I can be absolutely no help because I don't know how to use it, but follow these instructions. You can text a code here. Here's the code. So the code showing up in red, right? That's the number you send in, and you, I guess, text it to that number. I don't know how. I mean, that doesn't look like a phone number to me, so I don't know how that works. Or if you have a laptop, you can go to pollev.com/bio301d, and I think this should show up and give you an option of just click on one of those. So go ahead and send in a response, and we'll see if the distribution changes compared to what it was. And we will look at the distribution in a minute, but I don't want you to be influenced by what other people are doing. So you can see the number of results at the lower to the right of the middle. Okay, well, you can keep sending them in, but I will show the results now. So it looks like 3/4 of you now think it's definitely false, whereas, so that's almost doubled what it was before. So this would be a case where once you had time to think about things, you realized you had the ability to come up with a right answer all the time. You just didn't apply it. And admittedly, I said, don't think about it. Respond to it. Now there's another one that I want to go back to. It's alone. Seasons due to elliptical orbit. Here's another one that's somewhat bimodal, but I drew things on the board, and the statement was getting at, since planetary orbits are not circles, they're ellipses, the sun is going to be at one of the two foci, which means the Earth's further away sometimes during the year than other times. That's the basis of the seasons. That's what the statement was getting at. So again, bimodality, this is a case where you might not be able to figure it out for yourself. So pick someone next to you, see if they came up with a different answer, and see who can beat each other into submission on this one. Interesting. So now we're closer to true bimodality. Is it worth discussing this some more? So we haven't gone towards consensus. We've gone to sort of perhaps greater polarization. You want to talk about it some more with others? You think it'll make any difference? How many are absolutely set in their ways? And how many, so I guess without knowing which way you are, how many are absolutely set in favor of that end of the thing? I don't know what that end is. That end? Wait a minute. A minute ago, I had like a 30 with hands up, and now no one's going. So you don't want to commit, I see. Last year they looked different. Okay, how many are you set on the low end? Definitely false. And how many are set on definitely true? Now, is anyone, there isn't a whole lot of intersection. Oh, I wish I could do distributions here, because it seems like there are clusters, right? And so what will happen when the two ideologies meet? Okay, but we did see a change based on things. So one thing that happened is more of you went to definitely false. So for someone that went from definitely true to definitely false, what happened? Why did you change? You didn't want a bloody nose, or was there some cerebral reason?
I remember grade school, only learned that the axis was what caused the tilting of the axis.
Now, but did you get it right the first time?
No.
So you just forgot that.
Yeah.
And did someone convince you, or you just remembered it? Okay, so what's, if this is the basis of the seasons, what do we predict about the way the world is? Okay, but that's not very useful, right? Because it's hotter than hell out right now, and it's going to get cold in the winter. And so if we're in summer right now, we'll call it summer. Who isn't in summer right now? The southern hemisphere. Okay, so that is correct. So right now, Australia and South America are experiencing their winter, or, about to go into spring. So anyway, we did see some of you kind of realized, oh yeah, I knew this all along, but I just at the time didn't think about it. But the statement is wrong, right? It is the tilt of the Earth that matters as to which, face of the Earth is closest to the sun or facing most directly to the sun. So, so back to our points here. This is the one I've added. Some of you knew an answer but did not actually work it out at the time. And you can write that down while I'm going to the next one. So we lost 5 minutes because of the light thing. What do I want to do here? Yes. Okay, so here is paired histograms of the two statements that concerned aliens. The first one, the one that says aliens, which I guess is in blue, is a statement aliens are here, they've landed here. The other one, the red, is governments have concealed evidence that aliens have landed. Look at the pattern for a while and start thinking about anything about this that looks, you might consider surprising. Someone want to volunteer? So this is where you should be writing something down in your note, like a couple question marks, you know, what planet is he on, etc. But okay, how many need to hear that repeated? So she pointed out, which many of you probably realize, more of you think the government has covered up an event than think the event happened in the first place. This is actually very common. This is, I don't remember where the aliens was here. Oh, yeah, I can't show it, but basically government, so if you look at the height of these histograms, here, this is the government one, so all three of those are going to go down in the next slide. They all go up. Happens every year. My girlfriend in Idaho, who by the way is my age, but so don't want you to get the wrong impression. I'm still going to call her my girlfriend. She teaches at the University of Idaho, and she gave this to her majors, and same thing happened. And it's just like absolutely consistent. And there are two possible explanations I can come up with. So first of all, put this in your notes. More of us collectively, doesn't mean you as an individual, it's just as a group, more of us think government covered up an event than think the event happened. And the two things I can propose, which may not be mutually exclusive, is people have an emotional response to conspiracy theories. And the other is, this could be an example of what's called a conjunction fallacy, which you can look up on Wikipedia, which is what I did. But anyway, I don't expect you to know what a conjunction fallacy is, but it's basically if there's an event with a certain probability that somehow people think, then when you combine it with something else, it's more, becomes more probable instead of less probable. All this leads to the fact that, or I guess the observations that our brains are not rational. And I'll give you one anecdote that I find interesting. There are many examples of this, right? In our books you can go read about how our brains are just not always going after the right answer, but this is from a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. Author Kahneman. and I would never ask you, I wouldn't ask you anything about this anyway, but I would never ask you an author. But the setup for this is they gave students like you questions to answer, things like the ball and bat question or the probability, things that you kind of know, you should know the answer to if you think about it, but if you don't have time to think, you come up with the wrong answer. So 2 groups of students, same questions. In one case, the questions are clear in the sense of the print's clear, etc. In the other case, they're kind of smudged and faded and so on. Right? Now, what would you think about which group should answer more of them correctly? Some of you probably know the answer to this. Why the blurred? So, yeah, so he's right. I mean, I wouldn't have guessed that, but people get more right answers when the questions are difficult to read. Not the wording, but just the letters are hard to read, and that because apparently it engages their brain more, which makes no sense, right? But that's the way it is. So error rates decrease on questions hard to, I should say, visualize rather than read. So there's something about the brain, the way our brain works that explains this. There are all kinds of weird things that we wouldn't expect. And this, by the way, is my justification for subjecting you to my penmanship during lecture. Because when you can't read most of the words, you'll be thinking about it more than you would otherwise. I got something more to do on this lecture, but it'll take too long, so it's where I quit last time. We'll pick up with it next time.